Scouts going on their very first camping trip can face a lot of anxieties about the entire outdoor experience. Today we're going to cover a lot of strategies and methods to help mitigate a lot of the problems that might occur with their very first trip into the woods. Hey, ScouterStan, let's talk a little bit about that very first time that a scout goes on a camping adventure. We want it to be positive, and I had a message from a viewer that actually had an issue at camp having to do with bad weather, and the scout that had never gone camping for a long-term camp was totally unable to complete their experience at that camp. And I wanted to do a video that we kind of cover a little bit of the basics. We have done videos in the past on homesickness, and this is a really common thing, especially in long-term camp like summer camp. It's rare to find it at high adventure, because most of the scouts that go on that have had the experience of summer camp. So it's important that we understand the fears that first time youth going on a camping trip. It is scary. And many adults need to think back to their first experience away from home, out in the woods, pitched in a tent, and spending that night kind of afraid of every noise they hear. That is one of the experiences that really helps develop the scout and gets them aware of what is actually going on. Now, with older scouts, they will often get kind of used to being away from home. So homesickness is not necessarily the issue. That might be something of an anxiety, like the fear of the dark, or spiders, or snakes, or all kinds of critters that live in the woods that call the woods home. And we're visiting. So they have those anxieties, and that's totally okay. That needs to be recognized, that needs to be talked about, and usually the scout will come to understand that the animals that live there, calling it home, they don't want to be around humans. they skedaddle away. So over a period of time, they start to understand that. Now, creating a safe environment for the scout to come to an adult and talk to that team, because it's 2-deep leadership, that youth comes with their buddy to the adult and really have those fears. So we need to create that safe space. Many times at camp, usually not the first night, but maybe the second or third, there's usually the homesickness starts to really get in bad, and the first night is all the excitement, and boom, they're in bed. It's all the distractions, but then you always have some that have never camped before long term. So you have to create that environment that they know they can come to, and they won't be singled out or bullied or ridiculed in any way. So it has to be a safe environment. Now, setting some expectations going through the camping environment. Maybe do a tent inspection, look it over, and what they don't know can create a huge amount of anxiety. So it's important that they know their cot and how that works, and how the flaps on the tent are fastened onto the platform, and the overall environment. They need to be aware of it. And in that, you can point out and say, well, there's no snakes or spiders or any of those bug things that you're worried about in your environment. You're fine. So that reassurance and knowledge, what they don't know can create the anxiety. So that knowledge of going back to their tent and looking it over. Now, of course, this is all done with 2 Deep leadership. Okay, you got to make sure that 2 Deep leadership is a team and they stay together, and that's true for the scout and their buddy. So that's the buddy system for them. So the 4 go and look over the tent, look over their cot, look over their equipment and how they have it set up and stuff, and where their flashlight is. These are very important things. They can feel kind of thrown out there and lost if you don't give them that environment. Now, it's also important for the adults to have a very calm demeanor. They need to go through and talk with the scout and get them through the process of understanding all of their environment. That is a critical skill that the scout needs to obtain, and the adult leaders can give that. Pre-camping preparation. What that means is that before you go to a long-term camp away from home, it is very important that the scout, the brand new scouts that just crossed over from Cub Scouts or just joined at the recent sign-up, these new scouts have never had the experience of going camping. Maybe the one-day weekend is a great place to start. It is really important that there be some campsite and the fire and all the excitement of the camp and cooking and all that stuff needs to be kind of in their environment so that they can get used to this living arrangement that's outside of the norm. So many youth have never been away from home at that very young age. Teenage individuals never get that opportunity. And when they do, they don't know what the environment is like. So having those 1-day or 2-day campouts is a wonderful way to kind of get them started. I worked in a troop that had a requirement that before they could go to summer camp, the new scout had to go on at least 2 campouts. So then they were doing campouts every month, so it was totally possible. And that was a big help. Listening to concerns is an incredible important thing that your adult leadership needs to address. They need to listen, repeat back to the individual what they've heard and what they think the meaning of it is, and wait for that confirmation and do that big communication process. It is super important that you don't misunderstand what your scout is trying to say. You want to make sure that you go to the extra length of going and sitting down, well-lit area with the 2 Deep leadership, and you listen to their concern. It is so important. So many times adults, they don't actually listen to the scout, and that's not good, because we want the scouts to be heard, okay? And it's incredibly important that we hear that information, repeat it back to the scouts so that they hear it too. That's the important part. And acknowledging it in a kind and friendly demeanor so that they're not being confrontational. That is super important when you're dealing with homesickness, is to understand that problem. There are certain things that need to be done if you're dealing with homesickness, and I highly recommend the video. That's one of those things that is really important to understand. Now, before we go any further, I do want to invite you to our monthly meeting. It's on the first Sunday of each month, and it's at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So you're more than welcome to join us and ask questions and just have fun. You know, that's one of those wonderful things about that meeting. I also want to thank everybody on Patreon for their continued support of our channel. and our channel members. You can be a channel member. You hit the join button and join up. There's all kinds of badges and emojis and different things. They even get the videos exclusively for themselves, ad-free, which is an added bonus. And then, of course, if you don't want to join in and do a monthly donation, you could always do a one-time donation by hitting the thanks button. So get involved. I really do appreciate all that you do in scouting and here on the channel. Empowering youth with knowledge is vital to curbing some of the anxieties of camping. It's important that they know that there are designated spaces for safety. For instance, there are campgrounds that have problems with lightning, and there are areas of the camp that are set aside as shelters from those kinds of conditions. And they know what to do when a storm is coming. This is something that's very important. So giving them that knowledge, the awareness of these facilities is critical to helping them deal with any of their fears. In scouting, we talk about nature and wildlife. We talk about worst case scenarios where we have to use first aid. We talk about life saving. We do a lot of different things to give youth empowerment of knowledge. So knowing about these things will definitely help deal with situations that may come up. Gradual exposure to the outdoors is preferable to actually getting the scout accustomed to being away in the outdoors. And this is critical if the camping experience is brought gradually to them. Now, they could start off with something as simple as a sleepover. Now, that could be at the charters, like the church's location. It could be a single night. It could be a weekend. So these are experiences that could actually start that process. Being away, being out overnight. That is a very critical thing for youth to get used to, being kind of on their own, not totally, but kind of on their own and independent. And it is a huge step, and it's a huge step for growth. And I live in a college town. We have a lot of freshmen that have to stay at the school in their dorm. And a lot of them have problems because they've never been away from home. Scouting, they've been away. They've been away at Philmont. They've done at High Adventure. They've been on summer camps. They've been away, so they don't have this anxieties and problems that a lot of freshmen, and these are over 18 young adults that are having these problems. So it's important that scouting gives them those experiences, and gradually introducing it more and more is important. And it just takes away all the fears. Leveraging peer support is also important when you have a new scout. It's important that you get some of your more experienced scouts, usually about maybe a year, 2 years older, that stays within the YPT, and you kind of have them buddy up. And that's a great way to kind of curb a lot of the fears. And because this peer, their scouting friend, knows more about going on camping trips and who to talk to and where's the first aid, where's the dining hall, that kind of thing. This is very important. It helps them work that up. And there's a lot of good things that can come from that, but that needs to be monitored. So the Scoutmaster team needs to work with those that are working or camping with that youth to make sure that older youth might be aware of things about that scout and might bring it to their attention. So that's something that is very important. We're there to help and keep scouting safe. That's really the big goal when they're having these wonderful experiences. Now, another big experience that I've had this happen. I was in a very large troop, and it was policy. It was part of our group that all the scouts did not have a cell phone. It was a real problem. Not only with gaming and stuff that they can do on their phone, but there's other things that are not so good. So we have camp mode. We went on camp trips, and we left all that technology locked up in the car. That was very important that the scouts understood that. A lot of scouts these days think of the phone as peer support. It's not. Really is not. There's a lot of terrible things, a lot of good things, but there's a lot of terrible things on the phone. And that's one of those things that technology is not really needed in an outdoor experience. And I believe in the camp mode. There's a video about the cell phones at camp. Definitely don't rely on cell phones to be a peer. After camp reflections. Now this is very important, especially for the new scout. Typically when the scouts come back from a camp out, a camporee, the very next regular meeting that they would have would often be a Patrol Leaders Council, a PLC. This is a great time to really go over the roses and thorns that were talked about in the car, okay, or in the van on the way back from camp, okay? Things that they need to start and continue. Those are things that they need to think about and bring up at that Patrol Leaders Council so that they can actually talk about it and come up with a plan on how to either stop things from happening or taking the good things and making them happen more often. That is a very important skill. You're talking about the problems that you have at camp and really coming up with solutions. That is a critical thing in scouting. And as scout leaders, we know this. Our youth are learning this. That's the key. We need to make sure that they are supported and they are mentored and coached towards that goal of addressing problems and facing them head on and then coming up with a solution that's workable, that they could try. That is a critical thing, and we do so much for our scouts, and we need to keep doing it because our scouts are the future, and it's really, really important that we are there to help facilitate that learning process. And camping brings it all together. That's the beautiful thing about camping. So don't leave it out of your schedule, okay? Minimum 4 times a year in summer camp, okay? Minimum, okay? It should be more, okay? But definitely keep doing what you do, and that is so important. Now we do a lot for our scouts, and we keep watching these videos and coming up with new ideas. It's really important that we do that roses and thorns keeps happening. Start, stop, and continue. That needs to keep going. That's something that we do as scouters. And there will always be new scouts that are going to have difficulties, so we have to address them. This is a wonderful thing. We're doing a good thing for our country, donating our time to the betterment of youth of America. That is so important. It's amazing. Okay, so definitely keep up that good work. If you get a chance, check out the video on homesickness. It's amazing. Until next time, I'll see you on the trail.